are community development agreements really not supposed to have some basic standards? You know, like maybe as advocates like you, having to develop like a basic minimum template that any mining company or any company that wants to sign a community development agreement should take care of this, take care of this, take care of this. May not be in terms of specifics, but do something that handles developmental issues, if the environment, this. Shouldn't you work towards that?
So, actually, it's one of the objectives of our project. So we are using, even though we are promoting culture, we also want to use the community development agreements to promote culture, because you can capture some of those cultural things, maybe cultural festivals, one way of promoting the culture of the people. You can actually capture them in the community development agreements. You can also capture environmental sustainability projects. So what we are doing is two trunks. One, promoting the culture of the original inhabitants of the FCT, and also promoting that culture through good community development agreements to promote responsible mining that will help to sustain the culture of the people.
Hello there, you're welcome to Akweya TV, where we discuss history, art, culture, and development. And today we're taking on the space that many organizations haven't talked about as much, which is that of the indigenous peoples, especially those in the FCT. Now, we have a situation where, for those of you who do not know Nigeria, the Federal Capital Territory, which we abbreviate as the FCT, Abuja, was created by displacing some people who were original inhabitants of the land. And some of them still remain, and there are agitations because their culture, their history is being decimated. Nobody is taking care of them politically and socially, culturally. And that's why we want to have a conversation around that. In the studio today, I've got someone who is widely traveled, who has gone to several spaces. She has been a member of the NATI board, which is the Nigeria Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative. She has also been on the board of many international organizations. Her organization, Center for Transparency Advocacy, is one of those championing the cause of the indigenous peoples in Nigeria. Please join me in welcoming Faith Nwadishi to the studio.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Okay, so why does the Center for Transparency Advocacy think that this is an important issue?
Thank you so much. Incidentally, I get asked that question a lot, a lot of times, and people ask, okay, you're not from the FCT, why are you championing this? People forget that I am from the Niger Delta. I come from a tribe known as the Okwani people in the Niger Delta. When the story of the Niger Delta is told, you hardly hear about them. But my constituency hosts the largest gas reserve in West Africa. So when it comes to the history of indigenous people, you find that most people who are in the minority don't ever get their stories told. So when the opportunity came, we are here, based here in the FCT, and I have followed for a very long time the stories around the marginalization of the original inhabitants of the FCT, particularly political marginalization. It will interest you to know that the FCT was created in 1976, but from 1976 till date, not a single indigene of the FCT has ever been appointed as a minister of the FCT.
Wow. So,
and the Constitution recognizes the FCT like it should be treated like a state, but there's no governor. Yeah. So when you look at the people of the FCT, they are stateless. Yeah. And from what we have, from the history and engagement with the people, we're told that at the time the FCT was created, a lot of the young people who were here who wanted to write JAM didn't have a code for the FCT. Oh.
Oh.
So even at the federal government level, they didn't recognize the FCT.
Yes.
So they had to either go to Plateau State then, or Kwara State, or Niger State to be recognized. So these were some of the things that happened, and I felt that my people have also gone through, we're still going through all of that. And if we have a people who have decided that, okay, maybe because they didn't fight back, the federal government at that time thought that this was like a no man's land. Yeah. Because in the words that created the FCT, it was described as a no man's land.
Seriously?
Yes. The FCT, as we know it today, was described as a no man's land. And that was why the federal government came here. But unfortunately, they had people. Yeah. 9 distinct tribes of people who were living here. 9. So 9. I call them the ABE, 5 Gs and K. ABE, 5 Gs and K. So you have the Amwawa people, okay. You have the Bassa people, you have the Bira people, okay. You have the Gwandara people, you have the Ganagana people, you have the Gbagi people, you have the Gbari people, you have the Gabi, I think it's Gabi or Gede, you have Gede people, okay. And then you have the Koro people. Okay. Essentially, everybody thinks about the FCT as just Gbagi, but you have these 9 tribes living within the Gbagi. The Gbagis are more in number. Okay. The second largest ethnic group are the Koro people that you don't ever hear about. And so you have these people who were within this area. Then the FCT was actually carved out of former Plateau, Kwara, before the creation of Kogi State. Yeah. Then you have Niger State, they have Kaduna State. So when they came and found that there were people that were here, they decided to relocate people to these other states so that they can take ownership, claim the statehood of these other states. I know it's a very difficult thing. Yes. The people are predominantly farmers, yes. And so you are taking them away from their farm means of livelihood. Yes. And you promised that you were going to relocate them. In relocating them, you are going to make their lives better. You're going to make them feel as if they have not lost anything. You know, where you have, like, when Nigeria played the match against Ghana and we lost, the people came out and said there were people who were living there, and they were relocated but never compensated up to today. So, and they said nothing good will come out of that place. In fact, there was this story. Okay, so there was this story that at the time when they were building that place, there was always, I think the roof was always falling until they called the people and they appeased their gods. Very interesting story about the culture of the people. So you have these people who politically they are not recognized, they have never been there, and then you have a constitution that says in constituting the Federal Executive Council, you must have at least 1 person from each of the 36 states. And because the constitution already gives the states status to the Federal Executive, Federal Capital Territory, you expect that somebody from the Federal Capital Territory would also be appointed into the Federal Executive Council. Not one has ever been appointed into the Federal Executive Council. Even though the people had gone to court and they got judgment asking that the federal government must appoint somebody into the Federal Executive Council, they have never done that. Now, what the people are saying that is that we're not saying appoint anybody from the 9 tribes that are in the FCT. Okay. Appoint anybody, because if FCT is like a federal capital territory, appoint anybody, somebody that you say this person represents the interests of the Federal Capital Territory. Let them be on the executive on the Federal Executive Council. So, and you have never done that. And we had the opportunity to do that in the Constitution. Unfortunately, Senate voted against those provisions there. About one, having somebody from the Federal Executive Council being on the, somebody from the Federal Capital Territory being on the Federal Executive Council. And unfortunately, the Senate didn't pass that. And right now, we don't have that. We don't see that coming through. So these are some of the things. Now, what has happened is that in the name of development, you have carried a people and say, we're going to relocate you, we're going to give you compensation. These people have been relocated, but they were not compensated. Okay. And then you did not give them befitting accommodation. You need to go to places that are described as the indigenous people's villages. They are
like the
Gariki village.
Yeah,
you know, where a lot of people know about Lagos Street.
Yeah.
If you drive into Lagos Street and you drive along Gariki towards the market,
Yes.
the kind of building, the kind of development you see there is a 360 degrees departure from the kind of life the people are living there.
Yeah.
Now let me shock you further. Ushafa.
Yes.
Ushafa that we know is where you have the water everybody drinks.
Yes.
In the FCT, Ushafa doesn't have water. Yes.
They don't have water.
They don't have potable
and you
water.
Transport water.
Yes.
Like 30
Every
kilometers.
household in the FCT drinks the water that comes from Ushafa, Smandam. And the people don't have water. And you have one narrow road in. If you are driving a very big vehicle, it will be a great challenge for you to even turn from the home of the chief of Ushafa.
So why is this, especially like you have the experience of the Niger Delta, you know, why is this always the case where the people that give Nigeria something never get anything in return?
That's
is
always
this constitutional? Is this cultural? Where does this come from?
It's not constitutional.
Is it cultural?
It's not cultural. It's not cultural because what happens is that you take the culture away from the people. When you take a culture away from the people, they lose their identity. Now we are Nigerians, we are Africans. The things that stand us out are those things that people assign to us as our culture, and we know we have practiced over time.
Yes.
When the colonization came, we almost lost our culture, and there's been a lot of interference with our culture. And you see that culture, for instance, an African culture that says anybody that steals from the common good should be ostracized. But now, because of the I want to say the fact that we have other cultures mingled into our culture, you see somebody stealing from the common good, rather than ostracizing that person, we are celebrating that person. So what has happened over the years is because you have a people who were not so politically exposed, and you have other people who were so politically exposed, came into the place and is taking advantage, always taking advantage. It was so pathetic. We went to one of the communities, I think it was around in Buari area council. The person said, you know, before civilization came, they told us they were going to bring civilization. That was what they told them, that they were bringing civilization. They gave them a lot of promises, and then they came, and these promises were never fulfilled. Now, if you go to some of the communities, there's a community we went to shoot in Kuje area council. I think I tried to remember the name of that community. There's this pond of water that looks more like mud water. The community drinks from that water. The cattle drink from that water. Now, that particular land has been given out to a company who is already fencing that place, and the people won't even have access to that water to drink. They won't have access to that water to drink. So, and you have, for instance, even in Gariki, the Gariki that we know, we have been told stories of streams that the people can no longer even have access to. These were things that were the culture of the people. But you come and give them Greek gifts and say, you know, when we come, we're going to make life better, we're going to do this, we're going to relocate you to a better place. And the people, because they're not fighting, they say, okay, this is good, something that is good that's going to come for us. And for years, I've been waiting for you to do that. In some of these communities, they don't have health centers. They don't have good schools. So they have to go to the nearest place. For instance, when you go into, you can't find the Ushafa Health Center, for instance, you need to come out to either Buari or come to Gariki to be able to go to some of these primary health care centers that you have. So over the years, the political class come, like they give you carrot, present it as if, oh, what you have now is not good. By the time we come in, we're going to give you a better stay. And that was what has happened. The same thing happened in the Niger Delta region. Where you say, oh, this is resources that we're going to use to develop, and then the people are quiet. It's okay, let us come if this is going to benefit all of us. And suddenly, after not just a few years, after so many years, you realize that this is really not benefiting you. Rather, it is killing you, it is destroying you. You are not not even getting a share. You're not getting a piece of the cake. So the people now begin to ask back. And because coming back to the question you asked, how did we get here? Why is it? Is it cultural? Is it in the constitution? It's not in the constitution. It's not cultural. The African culture that we can feel in all of the cultures in Nigeria recognizes that I am my brother's or my sister's keeper. But what we see in practice is that if I have more advantage over my brother or my sister, I should kill my brother and my sister so that I can live alone.
Wow. So should the FCT, do you foresee the FCT indigenes going violent over this?
I don't expect them to go violent, and because each time we talk about it, they always say they don't want to go violent, they don't want to be like the Niger Delta, they just want you to address their question, make sure that their issues are taken into consideration. And if care is not taken, really, I see it happening. Yeah. But a lot of the leaders we are talking to, and even the young people they are talking to, they are willing to have a conversation. They're willing to have a dialogue. They are willing to, those agreements they have had in the past, they are willing to have all of that. Now, let me tell you something. There's everybody knows Apo quarters and all of that. There's a hill there.
I was going to come back to that after the break. Actually,
oh, really? Okay.
I want to tell us that story after the break.
Okay,
it's an interesting story that she's going to tell us, and I'll ask that after the break. Please stay tuned. If you are watching on NTA, please know that we are also on YouTube at youtube.com/Akweya TV. We're on TikTok. We're on every of the major platforms at Akweya TV. And you can please share this video and subscribe to our channel. And just hold on just a minute and we'll be right back.
Hey, what's up, people? My name is Solomon Lange, and you're watching Akweya TV. God bless you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ochaya Ojofu. I am the founder of Akweya Children Carnival. Watch Akweya TV.
Yemasni ame Veronica Ochido. Engaga ya Akweya TV.
Agatugole gadam. Ihiyegun kama oge David Mbede. Mbo bagaji. Tugolega Agatu, local government of Benue State. Umbo reporter Akweya TV. Akweya TV.
All right, welcome back, and thank you for staying with us. Thank you so much for sharing the video and making sure your colleagues also watch what we are discussing. So I told you just before we went on the break that Faith is going to tell us a beautiful story, an interesting story about the FCT. It's heartbreaking, but just listen.
Okay, so everybody knows Apo quarters, where we have our legislators live. Just behind there, there's a rock. Where you have the radio station is there, and each time the radio station comes on air, they call it the Apo Hills. In the course of our project, we went there and we noticed that hill is a very significant hill, closely tied to the history of the Gariki people. Now, rightly, that hill is not called Apo Hill; it's actually called the Gariki Hills. The Gariki people lived on top of that hill. On top of it is very flat. If you're able to, take you between 40 to 45 minutes to get to the peak of that. And we found out that the Gariki people have had 18 chiefs. They have had 18. The 18th chief is the one that is reigning now. 16 of those chiefs were buried on top of that hill. 16 of them.
What of the 17th? Then
the 17th one had died, and the people have not been given access to go to that hill to bury their king. Because they say they usually have a procession. They do a procession, they go there, they bury their king. That for security reasons, the people cannot do a procession to go and bury their king. You can imagine what emotional trauma, even the present Sape, because that's what they call him, the present Sape, the king of the hills. That's the meaning of that. The kind of trauma he will be going through, that he has not been able to bury his predecessor. He has not been able to do the tradition, what he has to do as a tradition. you know. But you go on top of that, hill, and you see a lot of the hill. So it's beautiful, the story they tell you. When the jihadists came trying to overtake them, they were on top of that hill. Yeah. They showed us where the women could even come through to come to safety, and it was one of the reasons why they were not able to conquer them. Interesting story. Imagine now the federal government preserving that hill and making it a tourist attraction. Yeah. Not only will it generate revenue, but it will keep telling the story of the people, the Gariki people that you have there. So many other hills around. But what have we done as a country? Some of those hills, we have given them out as concession to people. People have come, blasted those rocks. If you go to, there was a time, if you remember, in Abuja, the Pape area, Kubwa area, there were tremors. Yes. There were tremors. Yeah. These tremors were because of mining activities that were happening there. And do you know, the people told us that they lost lives because people were living in their homes, and then suddenly you hear this blast. Before they come back, those who have gone, before they come back, they'll see either the young ones, very young ones, or the very old ones who were left. They had died because of the shock. Okay. From that blast. And now you have what we call community development agreements. The Mining Act we have in the country that was signed in 2007 has provision for mining or quarry companies who want to work in a particular community go sign and develop a 5-year community development agreement that they're supposed to implement. Yes. If you go to Kubwa, for instance, the main Kubwa community, a company went and signed a mining agreement and said they were going to give them a chief's palace. I tell you, the chief's palace is equivalent to a town hall where you don't have anything, no chairs, nothing in that. And that's what was signed in a community development agreement that was given to community people. So because they are not aware of all of these things, they don't have those negotiation skills and all of that. So you see them just signing some community development agreements that we even see. You will hear something like, oh, mining company will give them money during Salah or during Christmas, and things that are not tangible, things that will not contribute. Yes, exactly, they are not.
And I was going to ask that question, but it's a bit different from our discussion, but it's close. Are community development agreements really not supposed to have some basic standards? You know, like maybe as advocates like you, having to develop like a basic minimum templates that any mining company or any company that wants to sign a community development agreement should take care of this, take care of this, take care of this. May not be in terms of specifics, but do something that handles developmental issues, if the environment, this. Shouldn't you work towards that?
Actually, it's one of the objectives of our project. So we are using, even though we are promoting culture, we also want to use the community development agreements to promote culture, because you can capture some of those cultural things, maybe cultural festivals, one way of promoting the culture of the people. You can actually capture them in the community development agreements. Great. You can also capture environmental sustainability projects. So what we are doing is with two trunks. One, promoting the culture of the original inhabitants of the FCT, and also promoting that culture through good community development agreements to promote responsible mining that will help to sustain the culture of the people. If you are going to I think it's do say that if you are going to that Kubwa, there's one market that they call Maitama market. Okay. Yeah. That place is called Maitama, but it is not the original name. But because somebody was in power at a particular time and decided to call that place Maitama, that place was actually the burial ground of the original inhabitants from that area. And they turned that into a market.
I heard that it's actually the relocation site.
It's a relocation site.
People from Maitama, the original inhabitants of Maitama.
People from Maitama were there, but the name of that place was not Maitama. Okay. The name of that place is a link to Kubwa. Okay. The Kubwa that we know around Arab Road and all of that. Before you get to the Arab Road, there's a particular Kubwa where the chief of Kubwa stays. Now, so that market that you see there was actually the burial site of a people. Now, imagine if you have buried your ancestor there. and there's a market there. It means that before that market was made, there were excavations, sacred sites. Community people hold very dear to their hearts such areas because they feel that they have a link to their ancestors and all of. Till tomorrow, the people are complaining that it is one of the injustices that they have done to them. So each time you go to that market, just know that you are stepping. You may be stepping on the ancestors of some people. So there are so many issues that we can think about. Now let's take the issue of access to the economy, access to education, access to health. Most of these people that have been displaced from their places and then relocated to certain places where you are supposed to have access, because part of the commitment they made was that, okay, this place we are going to take you to, you will have water, you have electricity. It's the same thing with the Niger Delta. There are certain communities you will go to, maybe Shell or any of the international oil companies are working in my community. What you need to do is come out in the evening and just look towards the east or the west, wherever they have their camp. There's light 24/7, there's hospital, there's house schools, their children are going to that school. And in this community, the original owners of that community, there's no electricity, there's no hospital. So you know, you wake up every day, you go to sleep every day, and you're just seeing this kind of civilization, as they have called the civilization there, and no civilization here. People will be angry. And if we're not able to manage that over time, it will not go well for us. And you know, there's a way where if I'm wearing the shoe and it pinches me, you ask me to address it, I will address it better than somebody who is not wearing my shoe. And that is what we are seeing happening in the Federal Capital Territory, especially towards the original inhabitants. The most important thing, if whatever I have said, people don't remember anything. I just want to say that we need to help to preserve the culture of the original inhabitants of the FCT. We need to relocate them. We need to fulfill our promises and our commitments to them. Relocation, access to health, access to education, all that we have said we are going to do for them so that we can prosper together as a country and as a nation.
So before we go, the issue of projects that, okay, now you're doing this as a project, but how is it going to be sustainable when the Center for Transparency Advocacy pulls out? We've had people that mobilized the original inhabitants in the past, like Imaize Azu, the late Imaize Azu.
Yes.
And then, of course, when he pulled out, the issues didn't sustain as much. What are we going to have in terms of sustainability if this project?
So what we have done, the approach we're using is to use art forms to be able to push this. Not only are we doing that, we have also identified original inhabitants themselves who are
TFD.
Yes, TFD. That's the strategy we're using. So we have identified original inhabitants themselves who are at the forefront. And I'm always very happy to talk about Mr. Lazarus Nyahulu. Mr. Lazarus Nyahulu is a secretary to the Gariki Chiefdom. We also have a very brilliant young man, Mr. Sananu Jacobs, who we have been working with to ensure that the original inhabitants themselves put this as their own agenda. You know what Mr. Lazarus said? He said for so many years, I call him the encyclopedia of the history of the FCT. He said, for so many years I've been doing this. At a time I felt I was losing interest, but when CTA came, you have just put the fire back. You know, so for me that's sustainability. If I pull back, take a back seat, I know that the original inhabitants are going to take this further with somebody like Mr. Lazarus and so many other people. We have identified women, we have identified the community of persons living with disability in the FCT. Yes, and we have identified Akweya TV. So these are, for me, it's most times sustainability of a project is not really about how much you're putting into that project, but how many lives, how many people you have been able to get that we take on that message passionately. And let me not also forget to mention that we have identified Baggywood. Baggywood, Prince Kure. Prince Kure is a chair of Baggywood. A very interesting, wonderful young man. And you have both the young, I call them ancient and modern of the history of the original inhabitants of the FCT, so that even when CTA is no longer in the picture, we would have set a very solid foundation to push them. part of sustainability is that we are going to identify community people and those we call the ambassadors, FCTOI's ambassadors, on negotiating contracts. Okay. That's the CDA. So we are going to build their capacity on negotiation, which some communities don't have, so that as they go forward describing all of this, they have the capacity to really advocate for their needs by themselves.
Wow. Thank you so much. It's really my pleasure having you in the studio. And I look forward to having you some more time. You know, like we'll be in the field with you for some of your theater for development activities, and we'll bring that to our ready audience. So it's been such a great time. I'm sure you had interesting conversation with us. We look forward to your comments in the comment section. And if you want to send us an email or a WhatsApp, tv@akweya.com is our email address. WhatsApp 090-44-800-200, and you'll be with us. Thank you so much, and see you on the next show.